The sun over Austin sliced through the tall glass walls of the Grand Regency Hotel, reflecting across marble floors as if the building itself were made of pride. In the quiet hallways, the hum of a vacuum blended with distant laughter and the smell of roasted coffee drifting from expensive rooms. Sarah Miller pushed her cleaning cart down the 18th floor. Her uniform was wrinkled, her hair tied up in a loose bun. In her left pocket, she carried a small, crumpled photo. Her husband and their daughter Lily, smiling in a field of sunflowers. It was the only thing left from a life burned away 8 years ago, when the fire took her husband Mark. "One more week, Sarah. Just one more week and you can pay the rent," she whispered. A man in a grey suit stepped out of a suite, smelling like money and impatience. "Hey, you missed a spot by the mirror," he said without even looking at her. Sarah nodded. "I'll take care of it, sir." He was already gone. She knelt down, wiped the stain, and polished the glass until her own tired reflection stared back at her. Inside Suite 1807, chaos reigned. Wet towels, broken glass, lipstick-stained cups. While gathering the sheets, something sparkled beneath the bed, a thin golden bracelet with tiny diamonds. Sarah picked it up, placed it neatly on the marble counter, and went back to work. Hours later, she was called to the supervisor's office. "Sarah Miller, come in," said Mrs. Clark, her tone sharp. "Where's Mrs. Davenport's bracelet?" "The gold one? I found it under the bed. I left it on the counter. She says it's gone, security checked, it's not there." Sarah froze. Her mouth went dry. "I swear I didn't take it. Check the cameras." "There are no cameras in the rooms. You know that." Mrs. Clark folded her arms. "You're suspended until further notice." Every sound in the room disappeared. The other cleaners stared, some whispering, others pretending not to. Sarah's face burned. "Please, I've worked here 5 years. I'd never steal." Mrs. Clark just sighed and handed her an envelope. "Your employment is terminated." The rain had started when Sarah reached the parking lot. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. "Termination notice." The words blurred as her tears hit the paper. She sat in her old Chevy Malibu, the roof leaking just enough to remind her how fragile life had become. On the radio, "What a Wonderful World" played, cruel in its irony. She laughed softly, bitterly. "Wonderful world, huh?" From her pocket, she pulled the wrinkled photo and ran her thumb over Mark's face. "You always said the truth comes out, Mark. But when?" Her phone buzzed. A message from Lily. "Love you, Mom. Did you get home safe?" Sarah typed back. "Yes, sweetheart, Mommy's fine." Then she turned off the screen before the lie could sink in. Outside, thunder rumbled, the sound of rain on metal mixed with her quiet sobs. That night, Austin slept in peace. But inside that car, a woman sat in the dark, holding the photo to her chest like a heartbeat. Her world had crumbled, her job, her name, her dignity, and yet beneath all that pain, a small voice whispered, "This isn't the end, because sometimes the people the world throws away are the ones who rebuild it." The next morning arrived quieter than the last. Sarah woke before sunrise to the sound of the wind rattling the windows of her small rented house in East Austin. The walls were thin, the kind that let you hear every car speeding down the highway, people heading to jobs she no longer had. Lily was still asleep in the next room. Sarah stood at the door for a moment, watching her daughter's hair spread across the pillow, a worn-out teddy bear pressed against her chest. "You deserve a better world than this, sweetheart," she whispered. In the kitchen, she brewed coffee with the last spoonful of grounds and split a piece of stale bread in half, one part for Lily, one for herself. When Lily finally woke up, her voice was soft. "Mom, are you going to work today?" Sarah hesitated. "No, baby. Mommy has to figure some things out first." Lily blinked sleepily. "Can I help?" Sarah smiled through the ache in her chest. "One day, maybe. For now, just give me a big hug." Later that morning, Sarah drove downtown. Her old Malibu rattled with every turn, but she didn't care. She just needed a chance. She parked in front of a tall glass building with a sign that read, Henderson Properties, Maintenance Office. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant and ambition. A young receptionist, distracted by her phone, didn't even look up. Deliveries go to the counter on the left. I'm not making a delivery, Sarah said softly. I'm here about the cleaning position. The receptionist barely nodded. Leave the form there. They'll call if they're interested. Sarah placed her folded resume on the counter and turned to leave. As she walked through the lobby, a tall man in a simple grey suit accidentally bumped into her. "Oh, I'm sorry, miss," he said, bending down to help pick up her papers. "It's fine," she replied quickly. He glanced at the name on her resume. "Sarah Miller? You used to work at the Grand Regency?" "Yes, sir," she said, lowering her eyes. "Not anymore." "I see." He studied her for a moment, not with judgment but curiosity. "I'm Michael Henderson." Sarah froze. "Henderson, as in the name on the building?" He smiled lightly. "That's right, I own the company." Her cheeks flushed. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't know." "It's okay." He handed back her resume. "What happened at the Grand Regency?" Sarah hesitated. The safe answer was silence, but something in his tone, calm, patient, felt different. "It was a misunderstanding," she said quietly. "They said I stole something. I didn't, but nobody wanted to listen." Michael nodded slowly. "Sometimes the truth arrives late, but it still arrives." He turned toward the door, then looked back. "Meet me here tomorrow at 7 a.m. We've got a warehouse that needs serious cleaning. Let's see how you work." Sarah blinked. "You're giving me a chance?" "I believe in second chances," he said simply, and walked away. She stood frozen in the middle of the lobby, holding the paper as if it were a lifeline. That night, Sarah told Lily everything. "A man wants to see how I work tomorrow. Maybe I can get this job." Lily grinned, hopeful. "See, Mom, Dad always said good things come back." Sarah looked at the photo pinned to the fridge. Mark, in his firefighter uniform, smiling with that same calm strength she'd just seen in Michael's eyes. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe destinies really did cross when least expected. She went to bed with a lighter heart. For the first time in months, she fell asleep, believing tomorrow might actually be different. But tomorrow would bring something she could never imagine. The sun hadn't fully risen when Sarah parked her old Malibu outside the Henderson Properties warehouse. The morning air smelled of wet concrete and oil. Inside, voices bounced off the metal walls, men pushing carts, women sweeping, the hum of machines warming up. She slipped her hand into her pocket and touched the worn photo, a small ritual before facing the day. Michael was already there, sleeves rolled up, a cup of coffee in hand. He didn't look like a billionaire, more like a man who'd earned his calluses. "Morning, Sarah," he greeted. "You're early. I like that." "Old habit, sir," she said with a faint smile. He nodded toward a cluttered corner filled with boxes and dust. "Start over there. No one's touched that area in months." "Let's see how you do." Sarah put on her gloves and got to work. Across the room, two workers whispered while pretending to mop. "That's her, right?" one said. "The short guy in the blue cap." "The lady from the hotel?" "Yeah." The other snickered. "Stole some rich lady's bracelet. Guess she's trying to act all innocent now." Sarah heard every word. She kept scrubbing harder this time. The sound of the mop against the floor drowned out the sting in her chest. By noon, everyone took their lunch break, everyone except her. A woman named Janet approached, holding a box of fries. "Hey, new girl, want some?" Sarah smiled politely. "No, thanks. I brought my own." She lifted a small lunchbox, cold rice and beans. Janet sat beside her anyway. "People talk a lot here, don't listen. Mr. Henderson's not like most bosses. If he brought you in, he must have seen something. I just hope I don't let him down," Sarah said quietly. "And do you can?" An hour later, Michael walked back in with a tablet. "Sarah, come here a second." She wiped her hands and stepped closer. "These numbers here, see? We're losing about 30% efficiency in cleaning routines. Expired supplies, bad routes, wasted product." Sarah studied the screen. Without hesitation, she said, "If you organize the kits by color and split them by floor, you'll cut that time in half. People won't have to search for anything." Michael blinked, surprised. "You've done management work before." "No," she said softly. "I just pay attention." He smiled. "Keep doing that." As soon as he walked away, the whispers started again. "Look at her, already trying to impress the boss," the man in the cap muttered. "She'll mess up soon enough." Sarah bit her lip but said nothing. She'd learned that silence often spoke louder than excuses. By the end of the day, the warehouse looked different. Floors shining, tools organized, even the air felt fresher. Michael returned, scanning the room. "You did all this by yourself?" "Yes, sir," she answered, exhausted but proud. He crossed his arms, genuinely impressed. "You see value where others see trash. That's rare." The words hit her deeper than he could have guessed. Later, sitting alone in her car, Sarah checked her cracked phone screen. A message from Lily blinked. "Good job today, Mum." "I believe in you." She smiled, tears filling her eyes. "One step at a time, Sarah," she whispered. "Just one step at a time." She didn't know it yet, but that step had already set destinies in motion that would change everything. The next morning, the air over Austin was crisp and grey. Sarah arrived before anyone else. The warehouse lights flickered on as she stepped inside, her breath visible in the cold air. She liked those quiet minutes before the world noticed she existed. Michael was already there, leaning against a stack of boxes with a clipboard in hand. "Morning again, Sarah," he said. "Sleep okay?" "A little," she replied. "Too many thoughts." "That's usually how good ideas are born," he said, motioning for her to follow. "Come on, I want to show you something." He led her to a large storage room behind the main floor. Inside, dozens of old cleaning machines sat broken, tangled in cords and dust. Some were half disassembled, others looked like they hadn't been touched in years. "We've been trying to fix this equipment for months," Michael said. "No luck. Motors keep burning out, parts go missing. It's a mess." Sarah studied the scene. To most people it was just junk. To her, it looked like a puzzle. "Mind if I try?" "Go ahead, just be careful. Some of those are expensive mistakes." She knelt beside an old industrial vacuum, unscrewing panels with quiet precision. The air smelled of oil and rust. Piece by piece she wiped off the dust, checked wires, adjusted seals. Her hands moved with focus, not haste. From a distance Michael watched, intrigued. She wasn't just fixing a machine, she was fixing herself, one connection at a time. After almost an hour, she plugged it in and flipped the switch. The vacuum hummed to life, loud and steady. Sarah smiled, a small, disbelieving smile. "Didn't think I'd miss that sound," she murmured. Michael walked closer. "No one's gotten that thing running in months. How did you—" "It just needed patience," she said. "Sometimes the problem isn't the motor. It's the dirt stuck between the pieces." He didn't answer. He just looked at her, really looked, and nodded. Soon, other workers gathered around. "She fixed it?" Janet asked, amazed. Sarah nodded shyly. "Yeah, I guess I did." The man in the blue cap smirked. "Pure luck. It'll break again." Sarah ignored him and picked up another broken vacuum. Within 2 hours, she had 3 machines working, and even managed to repair an old floor buffer. When a dusty radio on the shelf suddenly crackled to life, playing a soft country tune, everyone froze, then laughed. "I think the warehouse needed some music," Janet said. Michael chuckled quietly. "You know what I see when I look at you, Sarah?" She shook her head. "What?" "Someone who sees value where everyone else sees trash." The words hit deep. She didn't respond, just smiled faintly. During lunch, she sat alone again, scrolling through her cracked phone. A text from Lily blinked. "Good luck today, Mom. You're the best." Sarah whispered to herself, "If you believe in second chances, type, 'I believe' below." She laughed softly at the thought. It was something Lily would say while watching their favorite YouTube stories. By the end of the day, the place looked transformed. Machines working, music echoing, people moving with new energy. Michael returned, inspecting everything with a slow smile. "You did all this?" Sarah wiped her hands. "Yes, sir. I want to show you something tomorrow," he said. "Something outside this building. I think you might help me with a special project." "Me?" she asked, confused. "You," he repeated, smiling. "Sometimes the right people show up in the wrong places." She nodded, unsure what he meant, but for the first time in years she felt a flicker of possibility. Outside, the evening wind swept through the open door, and for a brief moment it felt like destiny itself was breathing again. The morning light spilled through the high windows of the Henderson warehouse, painting soft stripes across the clean floor. Sarah arrived early again, her steps light but uncertain. The air smelled of lemon polish and machine oil, a smell that for the first time reminded her of pride instead of exhaustion. Michael was already there, flipping through notes on his clipboard. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled. "Morning, Sarah. You've been here every day before sunrise." She shrugged. "Old habit. I like the quiet before everyone wakes up." He gestured toward the line of repaired machines along the wall. "These were dead for months. Now they're running like new. You realize you've saved us a small fortune already?" Sarah laughed softly. "I just cleaned and fixed what I could." Michael shook his head. "No, you did more than that. You cared enough to make things right. That's rarer than you think." His words caught her off guard. Compliments weren't something she was used to hearing. For a moment, she didn't know where to look. Behind them, workers began to arrive, the low rumble of chatter filling the space. The man in the blue cap passed by, glancing at the working machines. "So it's true," he said, not unkindly. "She fixed them." Janet smiled as she clocked in. "You're making the rest of us look lazy, Miller." Sarah smiled, just trying to keep the lights on. A few hours later, Michael called everyone together. The crew formed a half-circle in the break area, coffee cups in hand. Sarah stood off to the side, trying to stay invisible. "I want to take a minute," Michael said, his voice steady. "This company started with people who took pride in their work. Yesterday, someone reminded me of that." He turned toward her. "Sarah fixed 3 broken machines, reorganized our supplies, and made the whole place more efficient. That's initiative. That's leadership." Every face turned to her. Sarah froze. "Oh, I wasn't trying to lead anyone," she said quickly. Michael smiled. "That's usually how good leaders start." He took a breath, then continued. "Starting today, Sarah will help coordinate the maintenance schedule. Any questions?" For a second, no one moved. Then Janet started clapping, slow but sincere. Others followed. Even the blue cap guy nodded once before muttering, "Guess she earned it." Sarah's cheeks flushed. It wasn't applause she'd expected to hear in her life again. When the meeting broke up, Janet handed her a sandwich wrapped in foil. "Eat, boss lady. Heroes need energy," she joked. Sarah laughed, the sound surprising even herself. Later that afternoon, Michael stopped by her station. "You handled that well," he said. "I didn't do anything special," she replied. He shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. You reminded people why they show up. That matters more than you know." She hesitated. I know what it's like to be broken. So when I see something broken, I try to fix it." Michael's expression softened. "That's a rare kind of strength, Sarah. Don't lose it." He turned to leave, but before he did, he added quietly, "You've made this place better." That evening, the sky over Austin was streaked with orange and gold. Sarah drove home with the window rolled down, the warm air brushing her face. On the radio, an old country song played, the same one that had come through the warehouse speakers earlier that day. She smiled. When she pulled up to her small house, Lily was waiting on the porch, barefoot, holding her school notebook. "Mom, you're home!" Sarah knelt down and hugged her tight. "Hey, sweetheart!" Lily grinned. "How was work?" Sarah looked at her daughter. Those same bright eyes, that same hope she'd been trying to protect all this time. "It was good," she said softly. "Better than yesterday?" Lily tilted her head. "So they like you now?" Sarah laughed. "Yeah, I think they do." Lily squeezed her harder. "I told you." Daddy always said good things come back. Sarah looked past her daughter at the fading sun, the soft glow of hope settling in her chest. Maybe he was right, she whispered. Inside, she pinned the old photo back onto the fridge, her, Mark, and Lily standing in a field of yellow light. It didn't feel like a memory anymore. It felt like a promise. As night settled over East Austin, Sarah realized something had shifted. The weight she'd carried for so long was lighter now, not gone, but bearable. And though she couldn't explain it, she knew the next challenge would ask for more than skill or effort. It would test her heart. The week rolled by quietly. Sarah was settling into her new rhythm. Early mornings, steady work, the smell of lemon cleaner, and small nods of respect from people who once ignored her. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was hers again. Then came Friday. Michael called her into his office, a glass-walled space overlooking the warehouse floor. The afternoon light turned everything gold. He pointed to a folder on his desk. "I need your help with something," he said. "There's a contract cleaning job downtown. A luxury complex, Crestview Towers. The client's important and difficult." Sarah nodded, ready. "I'll handle it." "There's one more thing," Michael added. "They've complained about our last crew. They'll expect perfection. You'll go with Tom and Janet. I'll stop by later to check progress." Sarah smiled. "No problem." The Crestview Towers was glass and marble and silence. Every surface screamed money. The kind of place where she used to walk invisible, cleaning what no one wanted to touch. Janet whistled low as they entered. "Place looks like a museum." Tom rolled his eyes. "Yeah, and guess who's the janitor exhibit?" Sarah ignored the comment. She'd learned that some people were only comfortable when someone else stayed beneath them. They got to work. Hours passed in quiet rhythm, mopping, dusting, scrubbing fingerprints off glass so clean it barely looked real. Sarah was wiping the marble counters when she heard Janet gasp. Sarah? Look at this." On the counter lay an open envelope filled with crisp $100 bills, at least a few thousand, maybe more. Next to it, a handwritten note. "For Mr. Keller, Penthouse." Tom whistled. "Man, that's a week's pay times 10. "Leave it," Sarah said immediately. Tom frowned. "Come on. We could turn it in later. No one would know if a few bills went missing. They've got money growing on trees here." "Tom," Sarah said firmly, "we're not touching it." He smirked. "You think anyone would believe you didn't take it if it disappears? Not with your record, hotel lady." Her stomach tightened. That old shame, the accusation that had ruined her, flashed like lightning through her chest. "Exactly why I'm not letting that happen again," she said, grabbing her phone. "I'm calling Michael." Tom snorted. "Suit yourself." When Michael arrived 20 minutes later, his shoes echoed across the lobby. He took one look at the money and then at Sarah. "You found this?" "Yes," she said. "Janet saw it first. Tom suggested we hold on to it, but I thought it was better to call you." Tom's face flushed red. "Hey, I never said—" Michael raised a hand. "It's fine. You did the right thing, Sarah. I'll take care of this." He carefully sealed the envelope, scribbled a note, and placed it inside his briefcase. As they packed up, Tom muttered under his breath, "Teacher's pet." Sarah ignored him, but inside she trembled. Not from guilt, but from the sharp reminder of how fast one wrong word could destroy everything again. At night, back at the warehouse, Michael called Sarah into his office once more. The folder from before now lay open with a check clipped to it. "I wanted to tell you in person," he said. "That envelope wasn't a test, but it might as well have been. The client left it by mistake. They called me an hour ago. They were impressed you didn't touch a cent." Sarah blinked. They know, and they just offered us a 3-year cleaning contract, worth more than any job we've had this year." She stared at him, speechless. He smiled. "You saved our reputation today, Sarah. You saved the company." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Her hands trembled slightly as she said, "I just did what was right." "Doing what's right when no one's watching," Michael said softly. "That's what makes the difference." When she drove home that night, the city lights shimmered like tiny stars reflected in puddles. Her phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Proud of you, girl. You shut him up for good." Sarah smiled, setting the phone aside. She rested her hand on the worn photo on the passenger seat, Mark, Lily, and her, smiling in the sun. "Guess we're okay, Mark," she whispered. "I didn't let them take it from me again." Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away, but for the first time in years, Sarah didn't flinch. She'd faced temptation, prejudice, and memory, and walked out clean. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring something even bigger, because life had just tested her heart, and she had passed. 2 weeks later, the new contract with Crestview Towers was in full swing. The Henderson crew was working double shifts to keep up with demand, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt steady. She still carried her little photo in her pocket, still came in early, but now there was laughter in her mornings. Then one Tuesday afternoon, while the crew was finishing up at Crestview, the fire alarm blared. At first, everyone froze. The shrill siren bounced off the marble walls, lights flashing red. Sarah's heart jumped. Sirens always did that. Memories of the night she lost Mark came back in jagged flashes. Smoke, chaos, the call she never got to answer. Janet's voice cut through the noise. "Is this a drill?" Tom shook his head. "Doesn't sound like it. Smell that." The faint scent of burning plastic drifted from the utility corridor. Sarah dropped her mop and ran. "Sarah, wait!" Janet yelled, but she was already through the door. Inside, smoke curled along the ceiling. A cleaning cart had tipped over near an outlet. An old extension cord was sparking, flames licking up the wall. The sprinklers hadn't triggered yet. Sarah grabbed a nearby towel, soaked it under a faucet, and pressed it over the flames. The heat stung her wrists, but she didn't stop. She yanked the smoking cord free, tossed it aside, and stomped until the last ember died. When the sprinklers finally came alive, it was already over. Michael burst in seconds later, drenched and wide-eyed. "Sarah, are you okay?" She nodded, coughing through the haze. "Yeah, just burned a little." He looked at the melted outlet, then at her soaked shoes. "You could have been electrocuted." "I know," she said simply. "But if that fire spread to the elevators, people could have been trapped." He ran a hand through his wet hair, half angry, half relieved. "You just saved the client's building, and probably some lives." Behind him, Tom muttered, "Guess the hero complex runs deep." Michael shot him a look sharp enough to silence him. And the rest of the evening was chaos. Fire trucks, managers shouting, residents milling in the lobby. When the last firefighter left, the property manager approached Michael and Sarah. "I don't know who she is," the manager said, nodding towards Sarah, "but she acted faster than anyone here. If she hadn't, this whole floor could have gone up." Michael smiled proudly. "That's Sarah Miller, Henderson Properties." The manager extended a hand. "Then you've got the right people on payroll." Sarah shook his hand, embarrassed, soot-stained, exhausted. She just wanted to go home. Back at the warehouse that night, Michael called a quick meeting. The team gathered, still buzzing from the incident. "Listen up," he said. "Today could have ended very differently. That building could have burned, but it didn't, because Sarah acted when others froze." He paused, letting the words hang. "She didn't just do her job. She protected people she didn't even know. That's the kind of courage this company stands for." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Janet started clapping. The sound spread, slow, steady, real. Even Tom joined in, awkwardly at first, then with both hands. Sarah's cheeks flushed pink. "I just did what anyone would have done." Michael shook his head. "That's where you're wrong, Sarah. Most people wait for someone else to act. You didn't." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You said you know what it's like to be broken. Maybe that's why you move when others stop. Maybe that's your strength." Her throat tightened. She couldn't reply. Later, alone in the locker room, she sat on the bench, staring at her reflection in the metal door. Her hands were still shaking slightly, the faint scent of smoke clinging to her hair. From her pocket, she pulled the photo. Mark in his firefighter uniform, Lily on his shoulders. She whispered, "I did what you would have done." Her phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Go home and rest. You've earned it." She smiled, tucking the phone away. As she stepped outside, the night air felt cool and alive. Austin's skyline shimmered in the distance, and for the first time since that awful night years ago, the sound of sirens didn't scare her. It reminded her of purpose. But she had no idea that the biggest test of her life was still ahead, one that wouldn't involve fire or smoke, but something far harder to extinguish: betrayal. The morning after the fire, Sarah woke to silence. No sirens, no alarms, no smoke, just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the old wall clock in her kitchen. Her hands still smelled faintly of burnt plastic. Her wrists were red, raw from the heat. She stared at them for a long time, half expecting to see flames flicker back to life. Lily was curled up on the couch, her small frame tangled in a blanket. The TV was still on, muted, showing last night's news replay. A headline ran across the bottom of the screen: "Minor fire at Crestview Towers, quickly contained, no injuries." Sarah read it twice. Her name wasn't there, and she was glad. She didn't want to be on the news. She didn't want to be a hero. Heroes save everyone. She hadn't. She turned off the TV, kissed her daughter's forehead, and whispered, "Go back to sleep, baby." Then she went to wash her hands again. It didn't help. The smell stayed. "Oh, Daisy Tim!" When she walked into the warehouse that morning, applause broke out. Janet clapped first, grinning. "There she is, our fire tamer." Even the guy in the blue cap whistled. "Guess you're fearless after all, huh?" Sarah forced a smile. "Just lucky, I guess." Michael stepped out of his office holding 2 coffees. "Not luck," he said, handing one to her. "Instinct." She took it, nodding. "Thanks." He studied her. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," she said automatically. "Are you sure?" His voice was softer this time. "You don't look fine." "I slept a little," she replied, looking away. "It's just the smoke gets stuck in your head." Michael nodded slowly. "Walk with me." They stepped outside. The morning sun was rising behind the skyline, warm but not harsh. Birds darted over the parking lot, and the air smelled faintly of rain. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Michael said, "Most people would have run the other way. You didn't even think, you just moved." She gave a quiet laugh. "Guess I've seen enough fire to last a lifetime." He turned to her, curious. "You said before that you know what it's like to be broken. Is that what you meant?" Sarah hesitated. She'd spent years avoiding this conversation, years building walls around the memories, but something in his tone, steady, human, made it hard to hide. She looked down at her hands. "My husband, Mark, was a firefighter." Michael's expression softened. "He died 8 years ago. Warehouse fire, just outside of town. They said it was unstable, that the roof could collapse, but he went in anyway because someone was still inside." She swallowed hard. "He saved the man, but the roof fell before he got out." The silence that followed was thick, like the air before a storm. Sarah blinked fast, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "I was home with Lily. She was 4. The call came after midnight. I still remember the way the phone sounded. It's stupid, but I can't hear that ringtone anymore without feeling sick." Michael didn't interrupt. He just let her speak. "I blamed myself for years," she said. "If I'd begged him not to go in that night, maybe he wouldn't have." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "And then, when they fired me from the hotel, said I stole something I didn't, it felt like the world was proving I'd never be clean again. Like no matter how hard I tried, I'd always be the woman who lost everything." Michael stood still, his hands in his pockets, looking out toward the city. "You didn't lose everything, Sarah. You're standing here." She shook her head. "Sometimes I think surviving is just a slower kind of losing." He turned to her. "No, surviving is refusing to stay lost. The words hung between them, simple and solid. She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to dump all that on you." "You didn't," he said. "You shared it. There's a difference." For the first time in years, Sarah felt something she hadn't dared to. The faint warmth of being seen, not pitied, not judged, just seen. Michael looked back toward the warehouse. "Take the rest of the day off. Go home, be with your daughter." Sarah hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I am," he said. "Besides, you've already done more for this company than anyone in a long time." She nodded, smiling weakly. "Thank you, Michael." As she walked to her car, she looked at the city around her, the buildings, the movement, the sound of traffic. It all felt different now, quieter, realer. She touched the photo in her pocket, the one of her, Mark, and Lily in the field of sunflowers. For years it had been a reminder of loss. Now it felt like something else entirely. A promise that maybe, just maybe, she could finally stop living in the fire. The next morning, the sun came up slow and gentle over Austin, washing the city in amber light. Sarah stood in her tiny kitchen, flipping pancakes, while Lily sat at the table drawing with colored pencils. "Mom," Lily said, holding up her picture. "That's you at work." Sarah smiled. "Oh yeah, how can you tell it's me?" "The gloves," Lily said proudly. "And the sparkle on the floor." Sarah laughed, a soft, honest laugh that she hadn't heard from herself in a long time. "You got it right, sweetheart. That's exactly me." Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Can you come by the office around 10? Got something to show you?" She hesitated for a moment. Something to show her. Those words could mean anything. A new assignment, paperwork, maybe even bad news. But Michael didn't seem like the kind of man who called you in just to fire you. She looked at Lily. "You think I should go?" Lily nodded without looking up. "Of course. Maybe he wants to say thank you." At 10 sharp, Sarah walked into Henderson Properties. The warehouse buzzed as usual. Machines humming, voices overlapping, coffee brewing somewhere in the background. Janet waved from across the floor. "Boss man's waiting for you in his office," she said with a wink. Sarah laughed nervously. "You think I'm in trouble?" Janet shrugged. "Only one way to find out." She crossed the floor, palms sweating, and knocked on the glass door. "Come in," Michael said, looking up from his computer. The office was neat, full of light. A photo of a construction site hung on the wall, probably one of his first projects. Sarah noticed a small cactus by the window, the kind you water once a month but somehow stays alive forever. It reminded her of herself. Michael smiled. "Relax, you're not in trouble." "That's good to know," she said, exhaling. He motioned to the chair. "Sit down. I wanted to talk about something that might interest you." Sarah sat carefully, folding her hands in her lap. Michael leaned forward. "I've been thinking about expanding our business, not just cleaning, but restoration. Old houses, furniture, historical spaces. People pay a fortune for that kind of work, but what really matters is trust and attention to detail. You have both." Sarah blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," he said. "You've got an eye for things most people overlook. When you fixed those machines, you didn't just repair them, you made them better. That's rare." She shook her head slightly. "I don't know anything about running a project like that." Michael smiled. "Neither did I when I started this company." He opened a folder and slid a paper toward her, a proposal draft. At the top, Restoration Division, Pilot Program. Underneath, her name. "I want you to lead this," he said. "We'll start small, maybe an old library downtown, a few antique pieces. I'll guide you through the logistics, but I want this to be yours." Sarah stared at the paper as if it were written in another language. "Michael, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said simply. She laughed nervously. "Why me? You could hire anyone. Someone with a degree. Someone without—" "Without what?" he interrupted gently. She hesitated. "Without a past." Michael leaned back in his chair. "Everyone has a past, Sarah, but not everyone has what you've got. Integrity. I can teach skills. I can't teach that." For a moment, the air in the room felt heavy, charged. Sarah blinked quickly, fighting back tears. She reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the folder. "If I mess this up—" "You won't," he said. "But even if you did, I'd still believe in you." No one had said that to her since Mark. When she got home that evening, Lily was sitting on the floor surrounded by crayons. "Mom, you're smiling weird," she said. Sarah laughed. "Weird happy or weird scary?" "Happy," Lily giggled. Sarah sat beside her, lifting the drawing from earlier. She added a new detail, a tall building behind the cartoon version of herself. "What's that?" Lily asked. Sarah smiled softly. "A second chance." She looked at her daughter, the paper, the fading light pouring through the window, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to build. But as she tucked Lily into bed that night, another thought crept in. Good things didn't come without challenges, and something about Michael's offer, as generous as it was, would soon test not just her skill, but her heart. So 2 weeks later, Michael's new project officially began. The assignment: restore the old Westbrook Library, a century-old brick building at the edge of downtown Austin. Once a proud landmark, now abandoned, windows boarded up, paint peeling, the scent of dust and neglect in every corner. Standing before it, Sarah felt both awe and fear. "This place looks like it's been forgotten for 100 years, she said quietly. Michael smiled. "Then it's the perfect place for someone who knows how to bring things back." He handed her a clipboard. "You'll oversee the restoration of the main reading room. Polished floors, restored furniture, clean glass, full detail. The city council's inspection is in 6 days. 6 days, she repeated, startled. "Deadline's tight," he admitted. "If we nail it, Henderson Properties becomes the official contractor for the city's historical division. That's life-changing money and visibility." Sarah nodded slowly, nerves fluttering in her stomach. "Then let's get to work." The first day was chaos. The reading room was a graveyard of furniture. Old oak tables split from humidity, leather chairs faded to grey, chandeliers hanging by threads, dust coated everything like snow. Tom walked in, wrinkling his nose. "Good luck with this, boss lady." Janet smirked. "You heard him, boss lady. Let's prove him wrong." Sarah smiled at her team, masking her anxiety. "All right, everyone, start with the windows. We need light before we need miracles." She rolled up her sleeves and dove in. By noon her hands were black with dust, her knees aching. The smell of old paper and varnish filled the air. She worked quietly but fiercely, sanding, scrubbing, fixing, testing. Every move was methodical, like she was repairing not just the room, but herself. Michael dropped by late in the afternoon, surveying the progress. "You're in your element," he said, smiling. She wiped her forehead. "Feels like trying to heal a wounded giant." "You've got 5 days," he reminded gently. She nodded, already calculating what had to happen next. The floors needed refinishing, the wood had to be rehydrated, and one of the chandeliers was missing an entire chain assembly. "I'll figure it out," she said. Day 3. The team was tired. Tom complained about the hours. The heat from the floor polishers made the air heavy. Sarah barely ate, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. Late that evening, as everyone packed up, she stayed behind. The lights flickered, the clock ticked past 10. She sat on the floor, surrounded by half-cleaned furniture, her reflection faint in the dark glass. From her pocket she took out the photo again, her, Mark and Lily smiling in the sun. She set it on the table beside a dusty lamp. "Just one more night," she whispered. "Just one more fight." Then she turned the lamp on and kept going. She sanded, polished, stitched torn leather, reattached brass handles. Her fingers bled from a slipped screwdriver. When the exhaustion grew too heavy, she thought of Lily sleeping at home, the tiny heartbeat that kept her alive after Mark was gone, and she kept moving. Day 5, the chandelier crashed, a sharp metallic snap, a thunderous shatter. Glass rained down across the main room like falling stars. Sarah screamed, diving out of the way. Michael ran in seconds later, hearing the noise from the hallway. "Sarah, are you hurt?" She sat up, shaking, tiny cuts on her hands. "I'm okay. The chain gave out. It was rusted through." He looked around at the wreckage, the broken glass, the ruined wood below. The inspection was in less than 24 hours. "Can we replace it?" he asked. She stared at the mess, heart pounding. "No time. But maybe we don't have to." "What do you mean?" She stood, wiping her hands. "Give me until morning. I'll show you." Michael hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I trust you." All night, Sarah worked. She gathered fragments of glass, cleaned each one, and used wire from an old frame to build a new pattern, smaller, simpler, but elegant. The room filled with the smell of solder and varnish, the faint hum of determination. By dawn, she climbed the scaffold, her arms trembling, and fixed the reconstructed chandelier into place. When she flipped the switch, the room came alive. Light bursting across the walls, reflecting off polished wood and golden glass. Michael stood in the doorway, stunned. "You did it." Sarah looked at the glowing room, exhaustion in every muscle, tears in her eyes. "We did it." He smiled softly. "If you believe in second chances," he said quietly, "this is proof." She laughed through her tears. "Then I guess I finally do." The next day, the city inspectors arrived. They walked through the library, whispering, taking notes. One of them stopped beneath the chandelier, looking up. "This is extraordinary," he said. "It's not just clean, it's alive." Michael looked at Sarah, pride shining in his eyes. And in that moment, surrounded by light and silence, Sarah Miller finally saw herself not as the woman who was broken, but as the one who rebuilt. For 2 days, the Westbrook Library was the talk of the city. Photos flooded social media, sunlight streaming through the restored windows, the chandelier sparkling like new, the polished wood glowing beneath it. The city council praised Henderson Properties for preserving history with heart. Michael's phone rang non-stop, reporters called, clients asked for quotes, and in every meeting he made sure to say the same thing. It was all Sarah Miller. She led it. Sarah could hardly believe it. She still woke before sunrise out of habit, still packed her lunch in a paper bag, but now people smiled when she entered the warehouse. Even Tom greeted her with a nod instead of a sneer. For the first time since Mark's death, life felt stable, almost peaceful. Between that peace lasted exactly 4 days. It was Friday morning when Michael called her into his office. His tone was different, tight, uneasy. "Close the door, Sarah," he said. She did. "What's going on?" He hesitated. "The city sent us an audit request. Routine, they said. But one of the inspectors filed a complaint, claims the chandelier you rebuilt wasn't part of the approved budget. They're suggesting it was stolen material." Sarah blinked. "Stolen?" He nodded grimly. "Apparently, the glass pieces you used came from a storage lot owned by the city. Someone recognized the pattern and flagged it." Her pulse spiked. "Michael, I didn't steal anything. The glass was from the site itself. I found it in the basement. Broken panels, covered in dust. I thought it belonged there." "I know," he said quickly. "I believe you. But the city froze the payment until they investigate. And—" he stopped. "And what?" "They're threatening to suspend the contract until it's resolved." Sarah sat down, her body numb. "After everything we did?" He nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I'll fight it, but it could take weeks, maybe months." The old ache returned, that familiar sick feeling of injustice. She'd done everything right, she'd followed every rule. And still, the world was ready to drag her name through the dirt again. It'd be stay by afternoon. Rumors had spread. Janet cornered her in the hallway. "Sarah, what's this I'm hearing? The city thinks you took something?" "I didn't," she said quickly. "I swear, Janet, I didn't." "I know you didn't," Janet said softly, "but you should see the looks going around. People always want a story." Sarah's throat tightened. The whispers, the doubt. It was happening again. When she passed by the workshop, the blue-cap guy muttered to someone, "Guess the halo fell off fast." She didn't even look at him. She couldn't. That night, she sat alone in her car outside her house. Engine off, headlights fading. The street was quiet except for the hum of cicadas. She pulled the photo from her pocket, her and Mark and Lily, frozen in sunlight. "Why does this keep happening?" she whispered. "Every time I start to stand, something pulls me back down." Her phone buzzed, a message from Michael. "I'll handle this. Don't lose faith." But faith felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She stared out the window at her reflection. Tired eyes, calloused hands, the faint cut on her palm from the chandelier glass. Everything she had built, the job, the respect, the peace, felt like it was slipping away. And for the first time in months, she felt small again, invisible. The next morning, she walked into the warehouse early. Michael was already there, standing by his desk, phone pressed to his ear. When he hung up, his expression told her everything. "They're coming Monday," he said quietly. "Formal investigation." Sarah nodded slowly. "Do they think I sold the glass? Or they don't know. They just want someone to blame." She took a shaky breath. "And that someone's me." Michael's voice broke slightly. "I won't let them, Sarah." She looked up, eyes glistening. "You can't fight the system, Michael. It doesn't care about truth." He stepped closer. "Then we'll give it something it can't ignore. Proof." "Proof?" He nodded. "If those pieces came from the library basement, we'll find the rest of them. I'll go with you, whatever it takes." She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face. No one had ever stood beside her like that before. Not since Mark. And in that silence, she realized something. She wasn't just fighting for a job, she was fighting for her name. Still, as she left the office, the weight in her chest was heavy, because deep down, she knew how these stories ended. In her world, truth always arrived late, if it arrived at all. The weekends stretched endlessly, each hour heavier than the last. Sarah barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashing red lights, the supervisor's face from years ago, the hotel corridor, the moment her life had fallen apart. Now, it was happening again. By Sunday afternoon, she sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, invoices, cleaning logs, photos from her phone. Lily colored quietly beside her, humming. "Mom? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you going to get fired again?" Sarah froze. The question hit like a blade. She forced a smile. "No, baby, not this time. Because you didn't do anything wrong, right?" Sarah nodded. "That's right." Then Daddy would say, "Fight." The words came so naturally out of Lily's mouth that Sarah couldn't breathe for a second. Mark used to say that. Every time something went wrong, fight for what's right. Sarah's hands tightened on the papers. "Yeah," she whispered. "Daddy would say that." "Oh." Monday morning, the city officials arrived early, 2 men in grey suits, clipboards in hand. They greeted Michael politely, barely looking at Sarah. "Miss Miller," one of them said, his tone sterile. "We're here to review the claim regarding missing restoration materials." She straightened. "Of course, I can show you everything I used." They followed her into the old Westbrook library. The air inside was still cool and dusty, sunlight streaming through tall windows. The chandelier, her chandelier, glowed softly above them. "This is the piece in question," the older inspector said. "City records indicate the glass used matches panels from our storage lot." "That's because they came from this building," Sarah said. "I found them in the basement in an old crate. You can check the serial tags. They're etched on the back corners." The younger inspector frowned. "You're certain of that?" "Positive." Michael stepped forward. "We'll show you." They descended into the basement, flashlights cutting through the dark. Dust swirled like fog around their shoes. Sarah led the way, her heart hammering. "Right here," she said, kneeling near a pile of old crates. "See that mark? WL 1911. Westbrook Library 1911. Every glass piece down here has the same mark." The older inspector crouched beside her, wiping away grime. Sure enough, the faded engraving gleamed under the light. He glanced up, surprised. "She's right." Michael crossed his arms. "Told you she knows what she's doing." The inspector stood slowly, adjusting his glasses. We'll need to file a report, but this changes everything. Sarah felt her knees weaken with relief. So, that means the claim is dropped? He nodded. It will be. You did exceptional work, Miss Miller. You preserved original material. That's rare. The younger one added quietly, almost apologetic, "Sorry for the misunderstanding." Sarah managed a trembling smile. "It's okay. I'm used to misunderstandings." Michael put a hand on her shoulder. "Not anymore." Later, outside the library, the air felt different, brighter, sharper, alive. Sarah leaned against the brick wall, exhaling. Michael stood beside her, grinning. "You just cleared your name twice in one lifetime. That's something." She laughed softly. "Feels strange. I keep waiting for it to go wrong again." "It won't," he said. "You earned this." She looked at him. "You really believed me the whole time, didn't you?" "I did." "Why?" He shrugged. "Because I've made enough mistakes in my life to know when someone's telling the truth. And you—" He stopped himself, choosing his words carefully. "You remind me that good people still exist." For a moment, they just stood there in silence. Two people who had lost different battles, but somehow ended up on the same side. Then Michael said quietly, "The city's offering us the historical division contract. They want you to head it, officially." Sarah blinked. "You're serious?" "As serious as it gets." Her lips trembled, the weight of the past lifting all at once. "I don't even know how to thank you." "You already did," he said. "You proved yourself." Dull. That evening, Sarah drove home through the fading Texas light. The city glowed gold in her rearview mirror. When she walked through the door, Lily ran to her, nearly knocking her over. "Mum, what happened?" Sarah laughed through her tears. "We won, sweetheart. They believed me." Lily squealed, hugging her tight. "See? Daddy said fight, and you did." Sarah pressed her forehead to her daughter's. "Yeah, baby, we did." She looked toward the fridge, the photo of the three of them still hanging there, a little wrinkled but whole. For the first time, she didn't see loss when she looked at it. She saw survival. And somewhere deep inside, she realized that Mark hadn't been asking her to fight for him all those years. He'd been asking her to fight for herself. The next week felt like a dream. The city officially cleared Sarah's name, releasing the audit report that praised her for preserving original historical materials with exceptional craftsmanship and honesty. Henderson Properties not only kept its contract, it received a full expansion grant. When Michael showed her the letter, Sarah could barely read it. Her hands trembled too much. "I don't deserve all this," she whispered. Michael smiled. "You earned every bit of it." Word spread quickly. Local newspapers wanted interviews. A community blog posted an article titled "The Woman Who Saved Westbrook." At first, Sarah refused to speak publicly. She didn't want attention. But when she saw Lily cutting out the article and taping it to the fridge, something inside her softened. Maybe this wasn't just about her anymore. A week later, the city council invited Henderson Properties to a small ceremony at the restored library. The mayor would present a community award for excellence in restoration. Sarah almost didn't go. The thought of standing in front of cameras made her stomach twist. But Michael insisted. "You're the reason we're all here, Sarah. If you don't show up, the story isn't complete." So she went. The library looked radiant under the afternoon sun. Clean glass sparkled like water. The chandelier she rebuilt shimmered above the crowd, scattering light across the polished floors. The place was alive, the way it had always deserved to be. Inside, people gathered around folding chairs arranged in neat rows. City officials, reporters, and workers filled the room. Michael stood at the podium, his voice warm and steady. 8 years ago, this library was scheduled for demolition, he said. It was a forgotten piece of history. Today, it stands restored because of one person's dedication. Someone who reminded us that honesty, patience, and hard work still mean something. He turned towards Sarah. "Sarah Miller, please join me up here." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sarah froze in her seat, hands shaking. Janet nudged her gently. "Go on, hero." Sarah stood, her legs unsteady, and walked to the front. The audience clapped, but she barely heard it over the pounding of her heart. When she reached the stage, Michael handed her a small plaque, silver, engraved with her name. "For integrity in service and excellence in restoration," it read. Sarah looked at the plaque, then out at the faces before her, some familiar, some strangers. She took a breath. I'm not used to being seen," she began, her voice trembling. "For a long time I thought if I just worked hard enough things would get better, but sometimes life takes everything from you anyway." The room went quiet. Even the air seemed to pause. "I lost my husband in a fire 8 years ago. After that, I lost my job, my reputation, my confidence. I thought maybe the world had decided I didn't deserve a second chance." She glanced at Michael, who nodded quietly. "But someone did give me one," she continued. "And when they did, I realized something. Sometimes the people the world throws away are the ones who rebuild it." The crowd stood, clapping. It wasn't loud or forced. It was slow, steady, human, the kind that fills a room with warmth instead of noise. Sarah wiped her eyes, smiling through her tears. "If you ever feel invisible," she said softly, "just remember you're still here, and that means your story isn't over." The applause swelled again, louder this time. Janet was crying openly. Even Tom in the back raised his cap. Michael stepped beside her, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "You just gave them something to believe in." Sarah laughed softly. "I guess I finally found my voice." He smiled. "You didn't find it, Sarah. You earned it." After the ceremony, Sarah walked outside alone. The sun was low, painting the city in gold. She looked up at the library's facade. Her fingerprints were everywhere, hidden in the polish and paint, in every repaired detail. Lily ran toward her, waving. "Mom, you were amazing." Sarah knelt, hugging her tight. "Thank you, sweetheart. Daddy would be proud," Lily whispered. Sarah closed her eyes, holding her daughter close, as the golden light wrapped around them. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think he would." For the first time in years, Sarah didn't feel broken or forgotten. She felt whole, part of something bigger, something that mattered. And though the applause had faded, its echo lingered, not in her ears, but in her heart. Months passed after the library ceremony, but the feeling of that day never truly left Sarah. Every time she walked past the old Westbrook building, the light from its windows seemed to spill warmth into the street, a constant reminder that even ruins could glow again. Life had changed in quiet, steady ways. Her name now carried respect. Her pay was more than enough to keep the bills covered, and Lily had grown bolder, her laughter brighter, her drawings filling the refrigerator door. But Sarah wasn't the kind of person who could sit still once she understood what second chances could do. One morning she arrived at the Henderson office early, as always. Michael was pouring coffee, half awake. "You're here before me again," he said, smiling. She handed him a folder. "I've been thinking." "That usually means I should sit down," he joked. "Probably," she replied with a grin. He opened the folder. Inside was a proposal, handwritten, humble, but clear. "The restoration program, training for opportunity." Michael looked up. "What is this?" "It's something I want to start," Sarah said, her voice steady. "You know how many people we interview who don't get hired because of their past? Old mistakes, wrong assumptions, bad luck. I was one of them, and I know what it's like to feel invisible, to want to work, to be better, but no one gives you a chance." Michael flipped through the pages, outlines, costs, even potential partnerships with local shelters and re-entry programs. "You've thought this through." "I've been thinking about it since the day you hired me," she said. "You believed in me when no one else would. I want to do the same for someone else." He leaned back in his chair, reading. "So, what's the plan?" Sarah smiled. "We pick a handful of people each quarter, folks who need a restart. We teach them the basics, cleaning, repair, maintenance, give them real experience, real pay, not charity, dignity." Michael studied her for a moment. "You'd run it?" She nodded. "I want to. I owe that much to the people who never got their shot. He closed the folder and tapped the cover thoughtfully. You know, I think this company just found its heart. Beam. 2 months later, the first group of trainees arrived, 6 men and women, each carrying the quiet weight of mistakes and misjudgments. One had spent time in prison, another had fled an abusive marriage. One older man had simply been out of work too long to be noticed anymore. Sarah met them in the warehouse lobby, her hands clasped nervously. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sarah. I know what it feels like to walk into a place like this and wonder if you belong. Let me tell you, you do." The trainees exchanged uncertain glances. Sarah smiled. "You don't have to prove you're perfect. You just have to show up. That's where everything starts." Weeks passed, and the small group began to change. The nervous silences turned to laughter. Mistakes became lessons. Sarah taught them how to clean efficiently, repair equipment, restore wood, and take pride in every detail. Michael often stopped by, watching from a distance. "You've created something special here," he said one afternoon. Sarah wiped her hands on a rag. "They're doing all the work. I'm just reminding them they can." He smiled. "That's leadership, Sarah, the real kind." One evening, after everyone had gone, Sarah stood alone in the training room. The scent of polish lingered in the air, and the floor gleamed under the fluorescent lights. She walked to the wall where they'd hung framed photos, before and after shots of projects the trainees had completed. Beside them, someone had pinned a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for believing I was worth fixing." Sarah's eyes filled with quiet tears. She turned off the lights and stood in the soft glow of the hallway, looking out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere in the distance, the Westbrook Library shone like a star. She pulled the photo from her pocket, the same one she'd carried all those years, and looked at Mark's face. "See," she whispered, "we built something that lasts." She smiled, sliding the photo back into her pocket. The world outside no longer felt heavy. It felt open, full of work to do, people to reach, light to restore. Her destiny wasn't just about surviving injustice anymore. It was about helping others rise from theirs. 5 years later, Austin had changed, but not as much as Sarah Miller had. The old Westbrook Library now stood like a quiet guardian in the heart of the city. The bricks she once scrubbed now shone under the morning sun, and every spring the city hung new flowers along its steps. School groups visited weekly, their laughter echoing through the same halls that once held silence and dust. But the most remarkable thing wasn't the building. It was the people inside it. Every weekday morning, a group of men and women arrived carrying lunchboxes, work gloves, and second chances. They were part of the restoration program, the small idea Sarah had built from a kitchen table dream. The program had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What began with 6 trainees in a warehouse now included dozens across multiple sites, learning, earning, rebuilding. Henderson Properties had made it official. Sarah Miller, Director of Restoration and Training. She still wore her work gloves most days. Old habits die kindly. On a warm May morning, Sarah stood on the front steps of the library, clipboard in hand, watching her team polish the brass railings. A familiar voice broke her thoughts. "Still the first to arrive and the last to leave," Michael said, walking up beside her. His hair had turned slightly grey, but his smile hadn't changed. "Somebody's got to make sure the place remembers its roots," she replied. He handed her a coffee. "You know, every time I walk through this building I think of that night. The broken chandelier, the dust, the chaos." Sarah laughed softly. "And you still decided to trust me?" "Best decision I ever made," he said. Then, after a pause, "How's Lily?" 16 now," Sarah said proudly. "She's volunteering at the program on weekends. Says she wants to study architecture." Michael smiled. "Like mother, like daughter." Sarah shook her head. "No, better. She's growing up in a world that believes in her from the start." They stood quietly for a moment, watching the sunlight move across the marble floor through the tall glass doors. That afternoon, the city held its annual Hands of Austin ceremony, honoring people who had made a difference in rebuilding the community. Sarah hadn't planned to go. Crowds still made her uneasy, but Lily insisted. "Mum, it's not about you anymore," her daughter said, tugging her arm. "It's about everyone you helped." So she went. The auditorium was filled with families, city workers, and faces she didn't know. Faces of people whose lives had somehow brushed against hers through the program. When her name was called, she walked to the stage to a standing ovation. The mayor smiled as he handed her the plaque. "Sarah Miller, for turning redemption into restoration and proving that dignity once lost can be rebuilt." Sarah took the microphone slowly. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied. "I used to think life was about being strong enough to survive what happens to you," she said. "But I've learned something different. It's not about surviving, it's about rebuilding, one piece at a time, even when the world thinks you're broken." She looked across the audience, saw Janet smiling, Michael standing in the back, arms crossed proudly, and half a dozen of her trainees wiping away tears. "Every person you see here today has cracks," she continued. "Some visible, some hidden. But cracks aren't the end of something, they're where the light gets in." The audience grew quiet. Even the air felt still. "I don't believe in perfect lives," Sarah said. "I believe in second chances. I believe in the hands that keep working when no one's watching. I believe in restoration." Applause rose again, not thunderous, but deep and genuine, the kind that feels like gratitude. That evening, after the ceremony, Sarah and Lily walked home through the warm Texas twilight. Fireflies flickered along the sidewalk, and the air smelled faintly of summer rain. Lily carried the plaque. "You think Dad would have liked this?" Sarah smiled gently. "He would have loved it." They stopped at a crosswalk as the light turned green. The world around them buzzed. Cars, voices, city life, but for a moment, everything felt perfectly still. Sarah looked at her daughter and then up at the sky, where the last traces of sunlight painted the horizon. "Funny thing about destiny," she said softly. "You don't always find it. Sometimes it finds you." Lily squeezed her hand. "Is that what happened to you?" Sarah smiled. "Yeah, baby, I think so." But they walked on together, the city lights glowing behind them, their shadows stretching long and golden across the pavement. And somewhere, in the distance, the Westbrook Library's chandelier flickered, its light steady, its purpose clear. Share this story with someone who needs hope today.